Hi, Gasper. Welcome to the Boguslavsky and podcast. Before we start, just want to apologize about my voice. I'm sick at the moment, so if I'm coughing, I'm sorry to everyone listening to this. I'm so excited you made the time for this. You're in Los Angeles right now, right? So it's
Correct.
quite
Yeah.
late. Very excited to speak to you. You have the most incredible career trajectory, and range of projects are so impressive. You have worked on American Idol, Chelsea Lately, The Late Late Show with James Corden, and so many other TV projects. But before we start talking about that, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Gasper Chiaramonte. I'm a producer and editor here in Hollywood, and I mainly edit at the moment. Editing is been a passion of mine since I was about 13 years old. The second I kind of learned that craft, I really got interested in all things editing. So that's probably explains my background. I really wanted to explore talk show editing, documentary editing, indie filmmaking. So I really have just bounced around so many different projects, even YouTube channels. I run and help produce a YouTube channel. So I'm really kind of just dedicated to that craft of storytelling and telling stories with that post-production mindset, because at the end of the day, any movie, any TV show, any podcast even, eventually it needs to be edited. And understanding what an audience likes, wants to watch, how to maintain their retention. It's been such a excellent skill set to have, not just professionally, but even on the side projects I do for YouTube. And I think that's kind of where my area of expertise is at the moment.
What was your break into Hollywood?
Well, when I got into Hollywood, I first really started in New York. So I would recommend, if anyone wants to go to Hollywood, they don't right
Don't,
away. Yeah, you really have
don't
to
go to LA.
yeah, you really have to like get your feet wet for like at least like 2 or 3 years before you go out there, cuz Hollywood has a higher level of expectation and skill set compared to most other places. Like even New York, you would think, oh, that's a major city. There's a lot of experience that I gained there. Yes and no. You'll gain experience, but in Hollywood, things are constantly happening and projects are a lot bigger. There's a lot bigger budgets out there. So your responsibilities and your expectations, the expectations that the producers have on you are much, much higher. So you really want to start getting a certain level of confidence in yourself before you make that move, or else it's possible you'll drown. I've seen that happen to a couple people where they came out a little early and they didn't really build up their skill level to the point where it's expected of them. Now, I'm not saying that you can't learn over time. You certainly can. It just will take you a much longer time to kind of break in and have a successful career, because you're up against some of the best and the best of in the world in
But also,
Hollywood.
if you come there too early and you ruin your reputation, and LA is actually quite small, right?
It's very small, and it's a town that networking is not just required, it's the only way you really get work. So it's a word of mouth industry. I don't really have an Instagram. I don't have, like, I have a LinkedIn, but that's about it. I don't have a website. I have a resume, but I don't even have a reel. So and currently I'm editing a show for Netflix, like one of their higher end shows at the moment. So that was just someone recommended me.
What
That
was
was
your first big show? Was it American Idol?
first big show. I would say it was probably Top Gear. So I started off as an assistant editor, and I was a big fan of Top Gear, the UK version. The UK version, I think, is one of the best unscripted series ever on television. In any country. I thought it was fantastic, and so when it came to the United States, I got the opportunity to work on that uh, from the first season, and It was great. There was a lot of eyeballs on it. People were curious if it was going to be just as good as the UK version. It wasn't. The main reason why is because I think the UK version, they had hosts that really knew and loved each other, and there was this camaraderie there. There's certain things that you can't fake, and authenticity and friendship is one of them.
Chemistry, I
Chemistry.
assume chemistry can't be edited, no matter how good of an editor you
No,
are. Yeah.
no, no. Yeah, chemistry you can't edit. And that's the other thing too, I think you learn as an editor is you know, good editors could make good footage great. Okay. Bad editors, can't make anything look good, right?
Okay.
Um, Great editors can make bad footage look mediocre, right? Like there are like different things that you could do as an editor, but really, pre-production, production, you're really relying on them to do their job, because once you go in as an editor, depending on how well they did your job is going to determine how hard your job is going to be. But like you said, chemistry is one of those things where, it's either they have it or
How
they don't.
how big are the editing teams usually?
It
Let's
depends.
talk the big scale. Yeah, yeah, obviously it
Yeah,
depends,
big
but
scale. So like
yeah.
American Idol, Mass Singer, like those shows, they could get up to like 13 plus editors to 15 editors. Yeah, because like you're juggling so many different episodes at one time, and you have these deadlines, and
Is there
it's a
ever any friction, or do you guys kind of see the same things?
well, I mean, what do you mean by that? Like friction amongst the editors?
In terms of, oh, I want it edited this way. Oh, actually, this should be cut that way.
Mm, well, how it usually works in television, especially with like a big show like American Idol, you have, executive producers and story producers, people above you that are really giving guidance as to what they want. So you're going in there already with an idea of like what the expectation is of the thing that you're editing. Then I always tell people this, like when you edit, the first pass is yours, right? So you are the one that's looking at all the footage, and you are making a determination of how it should go, how you think the audience will enjoy watching this piece of content. After you do your first pass, it's no longer yours. It's then the
Okay.
executive producers, it's the networks, and then you're listening to their notes and feedback, and you try to do everything they tell you to do, because the ownership is not yours at that point. It's you're servicing a broader vision, and you're servicing the network and the executive producer. So, your ego really has to be checked at the door, when
Okay.
you're an editor. You
Okay.
can't really,
But that would differ because you worked with Sean Baker, who's recently swept up
Mhm.
at the Oscars, and you worked on Tangerine. I would assume that would differ a little bit on an indie film like that, right?
Yeah, well, so for Tangerine, I just really helped prep the deliverables to Sundance. I just did some basic assistant editing help for him.
Okay.
Sean Baker is the editor and director and writer and producer.
Okay.
Like, so that is different because he is the end all be all. Like, there is no one really above him other than maybe like his producing partners and the studio. He probably has conversations with them like anyone else, but um, with anything, and this is what I'll say, anytime you get on a project where there is a more refined singular vision, it's usually better than anything else, because it happens all the time. You get into what I call notes hell. So like you'll have a rough cut of something or a second cut, and the notes don't stop. They just keep on coming, and let's try to see it this way, and let's do it that way, and is there
It
any
sounds
more to
like
this?
marketing campaigns. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's really just going frame by frame and trying to nitpick every little thing, and that's the thing that I think is hurting Hollywood to some degree. It's a lot of cooks in the kitchen that really, you don't have this problem with YouTube at all.
Okay.
And that's why, like, for me, I would even caution a lot of like creatives today that are trying to get into the industry or trying to do their own thing. It's like probably start out on YouTube, because YouTube, if you are really confident in yourself and your abilities, and if you think you could provide audiences with a story, or if you feel like you have a voice, YouTube is this great playground for you to find your voice as like a filmmaker or an editor or a host. It doesn't matter. Like if you're doing anything within the visual medium, that is literally the place where you're going to get instant feedback. Even if you have just 100 views on a video and 3 comments, that is so impactful, because to be quite honest with you, those are the people I value the most in terms of opinion. The network, I'm always going to listen to them. I'm always going to listen to producers, but how does the general public view this? How does it affect them? Because they don't care about the office politics. They don't care about who said what to who and what the overall deal was and how much money
Well,
is
the
being spent.
studios are also commercially driven, which is understandable. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, they are, and I wish they were more. I think if the studios cared more about what audiences want and like, they would be listening more. And
Oh yeah. Let's invest more in the indie film space than a lot of the other films that are coming out.
correct. Yeah, like, and I also understand it from their perspective, and that's what I try to do. I try to like understand it from the studio's viewpoint. Like, Joker 1 did amazing. That did do, I think, $1 billion in the box office globally over time, and the budget was probably sizable, not as big as Joker 2. But when you look at that performance, I think that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to create big bets for big returns, and they'll rather, I think, sometimes go all in on a singular project, because even like Wicked, right? Wicked is an intoxicating example. Like that budget was probably, I'd imagine, north of 200 million, and it did 1 billion plus, in the box office. And that IP is going to live on forever. That music is going to live on forever. There's going to be toys and
Uh,
things made, fan art,
we,
like
my
people.
son asked for the Wicked Monopoly, which we
Yeah,
got him. Yes.
exactly, right? So I understand it, like, big bets will sometimes get big and long-lasting returns. Because like a film with a Nora, like, that's a film that I don't think a lot of people will return to, right? Like, I think people will watch Nora like once, maybe twice if you're a real like film buff. But I think what the studios are looking for is like, what are those Moana, style IP projects, or those projects that could get us, potentially 3 or 4 films in the can, like the Fast and the Furious series. I think that's probably, even though I'm not like a big fan of that film, that's probably, I think, the best business model I've seen, where you had the first film. It was made, I think, on a $38 million budget. I don't know what the marketing budget was for that, but 38 million, which, for an action film, that's, quite a bit still. It's not nothing. It's a pretty major budget, especially for that time. But after they made the first one, it did so well, and it was so repeatable that, they made rides, Fast and the Furious rides at Universal Studios. They made cars, they're in Fast and the Furious 7. Like, that thing is like their James Bond, right, for Universal. So I get that, but this is where it comes down to the executives and the producers that are greenlighting things. The uncomfortable truth is, when you pay those people, you're actually paying for something that is so sometimes like difficult to even prove their worth, which is their taste. That's the bet that you're placing, right? Like, so whoever greenlit Wicked, that's the person that, really got that ball rolling on that IP, right? Like, if there wasn't that person saying yes to that, it wouldn't happen. And from what I hear from the executives that I talk to at networks and studios, is they're also living in fear, like, all the time. And that's the problem that I also see with Hollywood, is they are scared to say yes, because you don't get fired for saying no. That's the saying that's going on right now
Okay.
in Hollywood. You don't get fired for saying no. You get fired for saying yes. Because if you say yes to
And
something
it bombs.
and it bombs, who gets the blame? The person that said yes. You know what I mean? That's the interesting thing from the perspective, I think, from the studio side is they're worried for their jobs, so they are walking on eggshells in development, and they're not sure. But meanwhile, on the other side of that are these people that are deeply creative and deeply passionate and believe in their projects. But also, some of them, even though they're deeply passionate and they care, sometimes the audience doesn't. And that's the other hard truth. This is the difficulty with storytelling. Like, you could tell me a story that you want to maybe pitch for a movie and you love it. And then I'm convinced, and now I love it. And then it goes to the box office. And you're like, oh man, not that many people love it. Like that's kind of the game
You
of
could still have a
filmmaking.
cult following, but it's
Of
just,
course.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's not a sustainable piece of IP.
Or
It's not
it
something that got
didn't
its
bring the
money back.
ROI. Yes.
Didn't bring, and that's the thing, like, this art form is still a business at the end
Yes,
of the day,
exactly. Yeah.
you
But okay,
know.
back to editing. For
Yeah.
those not in the know, where does the editor come into the process, and what are some of the challenges of your role?
So I think for editors, so we always come into the process like during shooting or when shooting is complete, right? So once there is something to edit, that's when the editors start. Like, once things are assembled, brought into the system, whether it's Adobe Premiere or Avid Media Composer, once there is something to edit, then the editors come in. The difficulty is once the editor starts assembling that project, and once we start finding out what the original intentions were, and that it's not capable, we're not capable of giving the producer, the studio, what they want, that becomes the difficulty. Where it's like, okay, your intention was to shoot this, that, or the other thing, and what you got is none of those things. You have this thing and you have that thing, and we still have to deliver a project. So now it's up to the editor to make that IP sing and make everyone look good. And that's probably the biggest difficulty for the editors. Like, most people don't realize, in terms of salary and how much editors make, we're making more than most producers. That
Oh, I,
that's the
I
value.
didn't know
Yeah.
that either. Wow.
Yeah, especially on the unscripted side, we are make like, other than the executive producer or maybe the co-executive producer, the editors are making, pretty much, we don't have any residuals or anything like that, but we're paid a significant sum, especially in the unscripted space. Because think about it, you have all this raw footage, you have no writer, it's unscripted, it's a documentary, there's no script. Who is creating the script? It's the editors or the story producers, right? Story producers, they'll come in and they'll do a first pass for the editor. So they'll look at the raw footage and they will make our decisions happen a little bit faster, right? So they'll look at, like, let's say you shoot for 2 hours or you shoot for 3 hours, right, in a day. And that 3 hour shoot, that'll be a scene that will only play on the air for like 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes. It depends. It's an accordion. You're kind of just figuring out, what's the best length for this content, and then what's the best length in the context of the show. That's the other thing. You build the episode or the show in pods, right? So I'm going to do this scene, and I'm going to do this scene, and then you put it all together, and then you watch it, see how it flows.
Oh yeah, can I comment on that? Just one thing. I've been
Mhm,
listening to That Was Us podcast. I don't know if you listen to it. And Dan Fogelman, who creator of This Is Us,
mhm.
he says one of the most difficult things for him for the show, for This Is Us, was getting it into those exactly, I can't remember what he said, 42 minutes, 47 minutes. I can't
Oh
exactly.
yeah,
He
yeah,
said
yeah,
that
yeah.
was one of his biggest challenges.
That's what's great about Netflix. Like, they will let you have like a minimum and a maximum.
Oh,
So you
okay.
could you
So
could
you can
kind of
play
like
around.
you could play
Yeah.
around. But yeah, when you're doing network television, you got to kill some really lovely
Yeah,
moments.
that's what he said.
And it's really really tough, especially if like the show is good or the episode is good. I think American Idol, like, they do a great job with storytelling, like telling the story of the kids and the singers and why they're singing, and it's emotional. Like, a lot of these kids don't come from rich families and wealthy backgrounds. They all have like a hard story or a hardship that they're going through, and we try to like let those stories breathe so that they could land. But sometimes you have to, like, okay, what is the most efficient way we could tell this really emotional story?
Okay.
And it's tough, you know what I mean? And that's where the executive producers and the co-executive producers really come in. They're the ones that, because for editors, like, sometimes I think that could be a very difficult thing, because it's like we've been living with this footage and we have seen the story now in this
And you're
way.
attached.
And it's not even that we're attached, it's just like now this version of it is ingrained in our heads. And we're trying to, like, we need to see like the forest through the trees. And so that's why someone above you is important, where they're like, you know what, they're going to make an executive decision. As much as we like this and this, it needs to go because it'll still serve the overall vision. But the audience won't miss it because they've never seen it. And that's kind of how it goes.
When it comes to talent, so let's say Chelsea Handler, I love her.
Mhm.
Do you have any access to her? Do you meet with her? Does she meet with? I'm just asking because I know lots of people who are not in the industry are wondering how does that work.
Oh yeah, well, when I'm working in talk shows, especially with Chelsea, on the Netflix side, because I worked with the Chelsea team when they were over at E, because she went from E to Netflix, and then she did 2 seasons at Netflix. It was the first talk show ever for Netflix, and I was happy to be a part of that. And occasionally she will come down. Like, I saw her more in like the kitchen getting food, you know what I mean, and saying like hello to her in elevators. And she's very lovely. I always say Chelsea lately was probably the best show I ever worked on. Like, she was really great to her employees, really really
I heard that. Yeah.
she's extremely generous, and she was really cool to work with, and I dug her style. But as far as like, her coming down, no, because like that's what the executive producer's for. So the executive producer will understand her vision and things that she will like and how to make her look good. So that's really like, when it comes to like network television, it's the showrunner that you're really
Okay.
interacting with the most, or the co-executive producer. It's like the right hand of the right hand.
Okay.
um but yeah, it's interesting.
Finally, any advice for aspiring TV or feature film editors?
Yeah, I would say, if I were to do my career all over, the first thing I would say is the way people are consuming content is totally different. The streaming platforms, they still exist. They're still doing well business wise, but YouTube has become this real powerhouse, because at the end of the day, you're in the boredom killing business. You're in high end television filmmaking. Like, yes, it's art, and there's elevated versions of it, but it's people wanting to spend their time learning, watching, or be emotionally moved by something. And if you want to learn how to develop that skill set, do not wait for permission to do so. Start creating your own content any way you can, especially creating the content that you think serves you the best, right? Meaning, like, I'm an editor that I don't really do like flashy stuff. Like, I'm not like, I have friends that are really good at like show opens, and I've done them before, but I know that that's not my skill set. Like, I could do it in a pinch, but I'm better at like storytelling and comedy, and like more like long form, letting things breathe. That's really what my skill set is. But I learned that over time in the industry. I didn't know that beforehand because I came up through traditional means. I started as an assistant editor and then got the opportunity to edit. So I was learning kind of like on the job versus now you don't even need to go to film school. You could get Adobe Premiere, which is like $24 a month. And I would actually look at like there's a YouTuber, fantastic editor, like unbelievable how good he is at creating stories. And everything is either found footage or movie clips. Like he's just creating
Well,
documentaries on his
my
own.
son is 8 and he runs his own animations channel. He does it himself.
Oh yeah.
He's 8 and he
Yeah.
has an animations channel on YouTube. I mean, this is wild, right?
No, it is. And I think like what I would even tell non-editors is start learning how to edit because I think especially in marketing and advertising, which I originally that's what I did when I was in New York was marketing and advertising. I think what they're finding is email leads are still, one of the best ROI, marketing tools you could have, right? Emails are great,
Well,
because
it's directly.
direct and, it's text based for the most part. And you could format it all day long, but it's just quick and easy. You could blast it out. And if you have the right targeted list, you'll have high ROI on that. Second, it's video. Anything video right now, whether it's a TikTok, a reel, a LinkedIn reel, an Instagram reel, a YouTube short, whatever you could think of that is a short form or long form video, the conversion of that to sales and to, let's say you're a content creator that's looking to sell a product, or let's say you're a company looking to sell a product, become a content creator and sell that product, and you have a lot easier time. And the reason why is because I think two things. I think number one, authenticity is probably the most important thing right now. I don't think corporate speak and the PR of yesterday resonates with the younger generation or even millennials. Like, we don't want to hear it. Like, we know what you're trying to do. You're trying to sell us something versus I'm following this woman on Instagram and it's her first startup and she's talking about like just straight to camera all the struggles she's having and trying to keep the lights on. It's like, yeah, I want to try that product. She's being real and she's not trying to sell me a pie in the sky thing, and she's passionate and I can see that. And the editing is very basic. You know what I mean? It's just, but it's getting your point across and you're seeing the person and you're hearing the person. You can't do that with the written word or a flyer or a graphic. And you can't do that with a polished 1 minute, 30-second commercial where it's a, disconnected voice of like, hey, stop by our mall showroom and check this out. You're immediately, I want to tune that out. Like, that doesn't work on me anymore. So I would say for any aspiring editor, just start editing the things that you want to edit and don't ask for permission and put it up on YouTube and make your own reel. I had this one buddy, I'll tell you this story. So if you want to find, like, I think one of the most fantastic sizzle type editors, like that does really nice high impact trailers. There's this friend of mine, his name is Angus Emerson. He's unbelievable. Like, I got lucky to edit alongside of him at American Idol and Masked Singer. We worked on a few different shows together. And he has such a unique style. And he really, I think, found that style making these videos with him and his wife going on vacation. Like, with his cell phone or with a small little Sony camera, nothing crazy. He had a little drone, but it was one guy with a couple of tools, and that was his paint, right? And his paintbrush. And then his canvas is what he did in post production, in the editing process. And when you look at what he creates, you are just like gobsmacked. You can't look away from it. It's like edited in such a creative way, and the way he chooses his shots and how he puts them together, and the sound design and the pacing and the rhythm. I'm just, every time I look at it as an editor, I'm floored by it. Now, that was posted on Instagram, like these videos of his.
Yeah.
And he was already working in the industry. And then he gets a knock on the door from the NFL. Hey, do you want to do like an ad for us? And he did, and it was amazing. And then another knock on the door. It's Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, and so he did the Taylor for Taylor Swift's movie, and then he did the one for Olivia Rodrigo, and then Lady Gaga, and Formula One racing. Like that's all coming from one editor, that showcased his skill level and found his voice on Instagram.
He started creating and they came to him. Yes.
I think I'm going to probably start taking my own advice pretty soon because I think I should probably diversify. You're lucky that you found me, honestly, because I do not promote myself anywhere. I'm very
And you're on
quiet.
LinkedIn, by the way.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. Yeah, because I had that post that kind of went viral.
Was it about Sean Baker, I
Yeah, it
think?
was about
Yes,
working with
that
with
was
Sean
it.
Baker and it was nice seeing like, hey, I worked with him about 10 years ago, and to see that arc of starting out in this little bungalow in West Hollywood, and now he's on the big stage, and he
I
got.
loved Starlet. I watched that years ago and it was one of his first movies and no one mentions it and it's such a good movie actually.
By the way, goes to show marketing is important. Even if you have a good movie, even if you have a good product, even if you good software, how is anyone going to find out about
Yeah,
it?
can I just mention this one movie that's just come out now recently? It's a funny name, My Old Ass.
Mhm.
No one has heard it. No one's watching it. It's one of the best indie films I have ever seen. But
Really?
yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know
Yeah.
about it. I mean, that's why, yeah, marketing is
Yeah.
important, and that's, I think what ultimately will have to happen, I think, for Hollywood, or what I would like to see happen, is that more, movies are done in the $5 to $6 million range, maybe seven. Seven, you could get a lot more done, but keep it there for a little bit, and find more voices. Like this is me talking to executives right now. Like my cousin right now, he's working on his first film as a director of photography. The budget's around, I think, 5 million. And it's 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 not just investing in any movie. Sometimes what you're also investing in is that filmmaker over time.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
Sean
Sure.
Baker, um that film Tangerine that I worked on with him, I want to say the budget was maybe $100,000. Like I don't think it was anything. It was shot on the iPhone. It was one of the first things ever shot on the iPhone as like a featured scripted film. Like that was the appeal of it. That it was using a phone as the way to capture the movie. But very, very, very low budget, and he did it. And Sundance, I think, uh once it went to Sundance, I think Netflix, streamed it for a while. Like it got distribution. Um, but that just goes to show, like, from what Sean Baker did with that $100,000 project, he was able to do Honora for $6 million, and then it did what it did for Neon and that company. Like the investment also was in Sean Baker, not just the film itself. So I would say, like, start looking at it from that perspective of like, even if you don't hit on the first one, you never know. That filmmaker, will get better over time. I think John Chu is another example of that. John Chu, who directed Wicked, if you look at his resume, like he did, what is it? That dance movie. I forget what his Step Up, I think it was, like Step Up 2. Yeah, like it was like it was almost like a, yeah, with
But
Channing.
yeah,
I don't know if he did the first one. I think he did like the second or third one, if there was a third. Yeah. I think he did like one of the iterations of Step Up.
okay.
And,
Okay.
you wouldn't think after watching that film that director was capable of Wicked. There would be no way. You wouldn't look at Step Up and saw what John Chu did and say, "Oh, that guy's going to go on to make $1 billion blockbuster." But it happened because, they invested in it.
Gasper, thank you so much for all of your advice and insights. I'm really grateful to have had you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Have a good one.